system. It is very, very much religious, and religion has been divisive in the entire world since many years before Jesus. The ecclesia, which is the kingdom vehicle, is not a religious word, and it's not about religion. It is about a government.
Come on now.
A government is not the same thing as a religion. And when Jesus comes back, you all know and believe he's coming back as the king. He's not coming back as the senior pastor. He's coming back as a king of a government. And we, as the ecclesia, need to have a new mindset, really, that is a governmental position as ambassadors of a kingdom, and not missionaries of a religion. And I see it a huge, huge difference. In fact, there's a lot of ways in which church and churchianity is in opposition to the kingdom of God, just because of the things that David spoke about, the divisiveness and the mindset of religion versus the mindset of governmental. That's my 2 cents.
David, I didn't have the recorder on. I'm making a little separate recording for this. Could you very quickly give a quick synopsis of what you had just said before so it could go on the recording?
Okay, yes. It's, let me tell you, it is worthwhile repeating, especially after my brother, what he just shared. I mean, he just shared the nitty gritty of why the kingdom is so different than the church mindset. And I'll just add to that before I go back to repeating what I said a little earlier is, and we all know this is nothing new, but it's just worth repeating. In the original scripture of the New Testament, the word church was not the Greek word anywhere. It was the word ecclesia. The word church did not even exist. That institution did not even exist. And we all know who put that word in there and why. But the word that Jesus used in Matthew 16 was ecclesia, because he was speaking of a government. That word ecclesia had begun to exist and be commonly known for 680 years before Jesus ever was born. Every empire from the Greek Empire had operated with an ecclesia assembly and institution for government purpose. But going back to what we said earlier that wasn't picked up on the recording was that the main difference between the church mindset, I'm speaking of the mindset, and the kingdom mindset is that the kingdom is about oneness. It's one Father, it's one faith, it's one Lord, it's one ecclesia, it's oneness. Before Jesus ascended, that was his most powerful intercessory prayer in the book of John. They may be one like you and I are one, so that the world will know them, that they're from you, oneness. Well, the church mindset, it's very divided. We have 3,000 to 4,000 different denominations, everyone with its own doctrine, theology, dogmas, teachings, and we're all divided. I didn't say this before, but if I'll just throw this in. I was in a meeting about 3 weeks ago here in Colombia, where I am at the moment, with some government officials, most of them military men, generals and colonels of the Colombian armed forces. And one of the officers, high ranking, he said, Mr. Castro, can I ask you a question? Since you're Christian and you're among, I've had it all my life. I've had this question. I've never had anyone that I felt I could ask it. What is the difference between, and then he mentioned the Catholic Church, he mentioned the Baptist Church, and he mentioned the Foursquare Church, which is quite common in Colombia. And he mentioned the Episcopalian Church. He said, can you define to me, what's the difference between those four systems? And I said, my answer to him was, they're no different. They're all exactly the same. It's just a different dog with a different leash, but they're exactly the same. And then my answer to, in addition, I said, as a matter of fact, you can put all of the various denominations and ecclesiastical system and put them in the same bucket because they're all the same. And so he said, well, why are they all the same? I said, because they're all religious. They're all based on doctrines and theologies and teachings of a religious mindset, not of a kingdom mindset. Well, we were there talking about some things that had to do with government, and I had been invited to share some thoughts, some kingdom principles. So the host of that meeting, who is the minister of defense for the nation, he said, could we schedule another meeting with you, and let's put our agenda aside, because I sure like to hear a little bit more about what you just said. And that meeting took place 2 days ago. And I was expecting there was going to be 10 or 12 of these high-ranking officers there. It ended up they got a room, it wasn't big enough. And I didn't. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not into metrics. That's another difference between kingdom and church mindset. But the room was just way overflowing with all these government officials, because the word got around, we're going to get taught the difference between religion and all these different systems and what the kingdom is. And the meeting had been set to be about a 2-hour meeting. It ended up being a 4-hour meeting. So we're living in an awesome time.
Thank you, David.
And
that we're probably going to have to roll,
awesome.
but that's very clear. Thank you so much for that. DJ, welcome aboard. I'm going to turn it back over to you. I recorded these little snippets that people had. I'm going to undo that recording or stop it when Wolfgang starts. So you just tell me when you want to start the recording. You're on mute right now. DJ, you're on mute.
Let me set the context right, because what we're doing in Nigeria is being approached from the angle of the need for us to have a kingdom colony or a kingdom beachhead out of Nigeria. You know, Nigeria, as you all know, is very popular, and we have most of the denominations represented in Nigeria, especially from the US. So, and also too, we have a lot of organizations talking about the kingdom. As a matter of fact, we've been talking about the message of the kingdom in the last 15, 20 years, you know. But where we have been missing it has been basically around the fact that everything that has been taught around kingdom has been postured into the church environment. And that has been quite unproductive. So in about 6 years ago, we started talking about the need to practicalize whatever the kingdom is in terms of the collective. So for us to be able to do that, there is a need for us to have what we call a kingdom foundation, because the kingdom is quite different from the church. So for us to be able to do that, there was need for us to harmonize understanding, for us to build a new platform for us to be able to do this, you know, because in the 90s, since the 98, 99, we've had apostolic people coming into Nigeria or probably Africa to talk about the gospel of the kingdom, you know. But in spite of all that reality, it has always crystallizes into another church form or a church group, you know, and there's not so much to harness in terms of the kingdom itself. So the question now arises for us is, if the kingdom is the definer, because the kingdom defines all, how is it for us to be able to work together, build a consensus, and reach our city? You know, those were the reason for our conversation. The need to develop a kingdom hegemony in our city. Don't also forget that the idea of one church in every city, you know, we introduced that into our kingdom community, you know, especially in the city of Lagos, because the churches in the Bible were separated only by geography. So we begin to mute this idea of one church of the city. And it is in this context we have what we call the City Apostolic Council, you know. So those were the discussion we have had. Then Frederick Tobonas came to deliver at least 2 sessions. Then Coversation session was so good. So we are gathered again here today to look at what he called kingdom foundations. So I need to apologize for staying out for too long. I just needed to get my machines cooperating with me. And I also have on the call Chuck, who has been like an enabler. You know, much of this will not be happening if Chuck or Charles Lakin has not been contributing to what we do back in Nigeria. And I have some of my brothers also online who are part of the creative core of what we do out of Nigeria. Before Wolfgang Simpson come on, I like to listen to feedback from at least 2 from Nigeria so that we can put the context right. All right. So before that, who wants to take a shot from Nigeria? Bryce, you want to take a shot? Sorry for staying too long out of the platform. Go ahead, you have the platform now. Brother Williams.
Yeah, well, welcome everyone. I mean, it's wonderful. The last meeting we were not even up to 10, but today we have quite a large number of people. And, you know, as I was thinking about the meeting we had with Wolfgang the last time, you know, I was very excited in my spirit, you know, for the continuation, you know, of where he stopped. You know, what Tobu did in the last meeting was more of, you know, putting the foundations right in terms of discovering the kingdom. And, you know, it's actually important that if you haven't heard that meeting, it's, you know, one could like go through it over and over again, because it takes a bit of a shift, you know, in the mindset to begin to perceive, you know, what the kingdom really is. But Wolfgang came and now began to look at how we could actually have this kingdom find expression, you know, literally and physically, so that it could be seen like a church, or like that is set on a hill, like a light that is set on a hill, that it could be visible, practicable, and actually be a profound witness, you know, concerning the kingdom. You know, it not being a church thing means that it has to be something that is very practical, very literal. People can touch it, you know, basically by the lifestyle of the people who are, you know, anchoring it and actually dispensing that reality, as it were. Or even for us that are here, you know, going further than knowledge is the wisdom of implementation. Looking at the 4 pillars that Wolfgang talked about, and I'm very excited that he's going to put a bit of a framework to what they mean practically, so that we can leverage on that understanding. Like Chuck said, that understanding is critical, and apply the wisdom to begin to build and demonstrate it, you know, as a witness. That's just my thoughts on how it has been before now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William.
Thank you, my brother. I also need to say that, this is not so much about another group starting. This is not about an apostle. It's not about a prophet. It's not about the gift of a man. This is just about God and his kingdom. And this is not an attempt to start another group. I just need to put that in, because especially in Nigeria where I am, there's been many, in quote, kingdom oriented ministry. But all of it, as you are aware of, they came back into the issue of just talking about a man, an apostle or a prophet, rather than following the way of the agape. I don't know if Dr. Lemmy, you want to say something from the Nigerian perspective?
Oh, okay. I think I would like to say something at this point. Personally, I have had my own dealings, and from about like 5 years back, I actually started having this strong sense of, we need to move beyond church, what we have always known to be church. And at that point, I actually started saying things like, I'm actually fed up of church. Now, the system of the church actually became something I was no longer comfortable with. Then the more I began to press into the Lord, the more I began to actually inquire of the Lord. Now, the Lord actually started to open a whole lot of things to me. And I began to see that the reality of the kingdom did not restrict us to the church, in the sense that we needed to now open up more. And at this point, I realized that we had a major challenge. Now, what do we consider to be the major challenge to the age of the kingdom? For me, I now realize that until we connected with all the spheres, and when I'm talking about all the spheres of the kingdom, I'm looking at issues of government, issues of, economy, talking about kingdom business, issues of, entertainment, just name them. We look at like 7 spheres. I started to realize that we needed to begin to build along these platforms. And if indeed we must interface with the systems of the world, we need to understand that building each one of these spheres is quite important in giving them a proper perspective of what the kingdom is all about. Now, if we talk kingdom, we need to understand that kingdom must be replicated in every one of these spheres. And for us, for instance, who have been into business, we realize that we need to develop a model, a business model that people out there will be able to identify with. So we are talking about kingdom, and we don't really talk about the grassroots of the kingdom, which of course is the church. We need to understand that it is necessary that we develop each one of these models. And for me, I have seen myself building kingdom business models. I've been trying to share some of these models, and I realize that more believers who have a clearer understanding of the kingdom need to begin to embrace these things in order for these models to begin to, find expressions in every sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Levy.
I think these are some of the things that we're looking at. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Yes, it has to be fundamental, it has to be foundational. I want us to also remember that Freddie Tobin talks about citizenship by design. That is to say, in that section, it talks about the need to move away from liturgy. That it is important that people see themselves as citizens of the kingdom and not members of the church, because it is this idea of church membership that creates a blockade in the minds of the saints from really articulating what the kingdom work is all about. Thank you for that input. Okay, one more input. Elder Demola, you want to say something, Elder Demola, before I turn it over to Wolfgang? Elder Demola also from Nigeria, one of the one of the leaders in Nigeria here. Over to you, sir. You are muted quickly now. Unmute yourself, Elder Demola.
Yes, I said thank you so much. I really appreciate, some of the things that Wolfgang mentioned. They are basically frameworks that helps us to work together and to build relationship, and then to build the nation across all dimensions. But the challenge is, where do we start? Where do we start? For instance, as soon as you start, in any nation, in any nation, as soon as you start, the first thing that's going to confront you, it's the divisions and the silent and sublime kind of ownership mentality, where you find out that you probably would not have, you have a little bit of, people will say yes to it, but when it comes to the practicality of it, you find out that they are not there. They find it difficult to be able to move forward. That has to do with insight and willingness to actually understand the nitty-gritties of the kingdom and to submit to the lordship of Christ. So I know you relate that, but the first question, the first thing that comes to my mind is that if you're finding, if you say, okay, I'm starting with those who have complete surrender with the lordship of Christ, you probably find very few, and those few will certainly may not necessarily be together in the same environment. So that means you now find that this thing starts with basic cooperation. To start with, it has to start with basic cooperation. It starts to start with building relationship. It has to start with building men, who will be able to now begin to have enough understanding and to be able to surrender to the lordship of Christ and to be able to relate the framework of God's kingdom. So be able to relate, to have a proper relationship. We started these things almost about 2 times. The first time we started was almost about 10 years ago. We had meetings, we talked to people, we engaged the pastors, we create, some of the, we bought some of the things we're supposed to use. We helped people, we tried to impart sight to people, but, when the whole thing began, people started to pull down to their own different kind of, sphere. And then that project collapsed. We started another one, recently, and we engaged people. People really buy into it. They really loved it. So, some of the people who really love it don't have the capacity. They don't even have the capacity. They're even living below the poverty line. So the question is that, where do you start with such people? Now, and then the people that have the resources, that can, I want to work with you. Those people have the problem of trust. So you cannot see that it all boils down to, okay, our relationship, how far have we gone in understanding the kingdom? Because ultimately, the kingdom is not talking. It's basically not talking. It is something that is built inside you, that makes you to be able to surrender to what you consider as the matters, of the kingdom, and as the matters, that concerns the ecclesia of God, so that there be advancement in that very kingdom. So it boils down to the fact that, how do we really create so one of the things let me just add to is, one of the things we now said we're going to do is that we'll create a building instrument, as long as to start to begin to see how we can continue to build people, not just in terms of their identity, but also in terms of their functionality in the kingdom, and in terms of a relationship and cooperation, to constantly do that, so that we'll be able to, so hoping that at a point in time, we'll be able to get some kind of critical mass, one person here, one person here, one person here, who will now begin to consider and begin to build. It's a painstaking, and it's something that is good, that's going to be confronted. So it's something that has to be supported with complete surrender, where you allow the Holy Spirit and you allow the faith of God to help one in the journey. So we're still on it. So I don't disagree with the concept that you have put forth. I don't disagree with the model being a safety net in the moment of storm, which is sure to come. I don't disagree with the fact that we need to find people to be able to to begin to move forward. Because even looking at some of the things that those who do not even know God have done with some of these frameworks, because they cooperate and because they apply them, you find out that how much more you now consider how much more will it work in the framework of God's kingdom. So there's a call for cooperation, there's a call for unity, there's a call for partnership, there's a call for relationship, there's a call for some kind of continuous engagement, there's a call for some kind of continuous illumination and relationship that will build trust. It takes time to build trust that will build, so that surrendering with God help position you to be able to say, okay, I can trust this, I can trust my brother. Being able to understand the kingdom itself gives you a sight to be able to say, at least we can work. And then you mentioned something that, okay, it may not necessarily start, because we are considering starting with, okay, bring everything. You probably find out that trust grows gradually. So the thing is, okay, you start with, okay, let's just begin to participate and cooperate. Then you find out as people begin to see the beauty of it and transparency of it, they'll begin to bring other things. They'll begin to, before you know it now, they begin to bring more. And then it gets to a level that you will not tell them. People will see it, and by the operation of this, they'll begin to see it in, and they'll begin to pour oil. They will begin to pour, because I've seen it work in a measure, a little bit, not necessarily in the kingdom. I've seen people that were built, just some people that are not necessarily kingdom.
All right,
build something like this.
Begin to round up now.
I'm rounding up, please. So build something like this, and it worked, to an extent, and people were pulling things that they have and bringing it together. So what we're supposed to be looking at is, okay, how do we start, and how do we surrender, and how do we really relate together in such a way that thing can work?
Amen. All right, that's from our elder here in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, before Wolfgang come on, I want to give opportunity to Charles out of Canada to probably introduce some of the people on the platform. Then I will go over to Wolfgang. Okay, over to you, Charles.
Okay, what specifically do you want me to do? To introduce what?
You have anything to say? You want to introduce anyone?
Oh, no, I'm just extremely grateful that we have such a wide gamut of people from Europe, Africa, South America, North America. It's really, and I thank you, Wolfgang, for inviting so many. But I can feel the momentum growing. And this is something I believe God is very, very much wanting us to all become immersed in and to understand. I've had a contention for a long time that the current ecclesiastical structure is not able to contain the weight of the glory, nor the impact that this revival that's coming at us, that's going to literally be a church that has yet to be born. The shoots are starting to come up out of the ground. Some prophetic people have prophesied that it could be up to a billionfold with a B. And the current church is just not capable of handling the weight. The barns cannot hold that amount of grain. So I think it's expedient that we really understand conceptually what the Lord had intended and purpose for the ecclesia to be. So it's in my book, it's very, very important. I'm going to close down this recording and begin a new one with Wolfgang.
All right, bless you now. All right, over to you, Wolfgang. Welcome.